Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Stockbridge Library's online poetry series. Our theme this year is Sparks in the Dark, and we are lucky to have with us today poet Julia Lisella. She will be reading and in conversation with John Gillespie. John started this program back in 2020 when he was president of the board of the Stockbridge Library. At the time, we thought it would be just a few weeks of bringing poetry into our homes during the onset of the pandemic. And here we are in 2024, still bringing poetry to everyone's digital world at lunchtime on Wednesdays. So I would like to tell you a little bit about our poet before I turn the program over to John and to Julia. Julia Lisella's latest collection of poems, Our Lively Kingdom, was named a finalist in the 2023 Patterson Book Prize and Grand Prize finalist and Poetry Honorable Mention for the Eric Hoffer Book Award. Her other collections include Always, Terrain, and the chapbook, Love Song for Hiroshima. Her poems have appeared in Plowshares, Alaska Quarterly, The Common, Nimrod, and many others. She has received writing residencies at MacDowell, Millay, and the Vermont Center for the Arts. And Julia teaches at Regis College and co-curates the IAWA Literary Reading Series in Boston. Julia, thank you so much for joining us today. John, as always, thank you for hosting the program, and I will turn it over to the two of you.
Yeah, great. No, thank you, Wendy. Thank you for the library and for hosting and your involvement. So, Julie, we start every reading with, what was your reaction to Igniting Sparks in the Dark, our theme for this year?
Well, I really love the definition that you gave to it, John, the flyer that you sent me. And I do think, to a certain extent, that's what we've all been looking for poetry to do, to provide some sparks of enlightenment, understanding in the dark of these current times. But I was thinking about it because you told me you might ask me.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about how that sometimes poetry can be a guide, but sometimes it can also be a spark that can't be explained in the dark, right? It can offer some questions and some should not leave you sated, I think, at the end, but should leave you with questions, with wondering about the next thing. And almost as though it's just a tiny portal of all those portals that can teach us something or guide us. So I have a lot of ideas about whether or not, I don't think that poetry fixes anything, but I think it helps us process things.
No, I like that. You're right. I wish it could fix stuff because I'd put some more money into it. No, but I think part of it is it's a new thought pattern that you can engage with.
Oh, there you are. I lost your
Yeah.
sound for a second.
Yeah, I read, my daughter gave me to lend her book, Houston's Dance of Joy, the 99 poems, and I read 99 poems over 2 days. And no, some of it just was, it just takes me to another dimension. And then where I'm someplace else, I can look, like a kind of a third eye thing. I can look down on another part of the world, and it just gives me different perspective. And it kind of makes me, I don't know, it makes me more thoughtful, hopefully. So no, obviously I love it.
Yeah, I mean, this series is so amazing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say a shout out to Wendy too. Thank you so much for hosting such a fabulous series. It's so nice at lunchtime too, Can get a little
Yeah, I think you might
insight.
have been the only one that said that. Usually at lunchtime, everyone's like, and Roz, you'll love this. So I post stuff on LinkedIn. Stop having lunch. Sign on to poetry. I feel like I should be like the the school teacher with the ruler. enough talking at lunch turned into poetry. Yeah, you're right. No, part of it is, no, listen, it's great. It's great. And during the pandemic, everyone was home, so we had a huge lunchtime crowd.
Oh,
But
I'll
people,
bet. Yeah.
there's a lot of views online afterwards, so it's good.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I think that for certain people it's been really helpful. And I know that a lot of people were mourning the fact that some of the Zooming might go away because it enabled so many people to have access, you know? So
wait a sec, Zooming can go away?
never.
I thought it was like your pipes in your house. How can it go?
That's
No, I'm kidding.
right. No, I think that was
Yeah,
people,
yeah. There you go.
you
There's
know?
another poem there. I could, yeah. The zooming, yeah, the zoom. What do we call it? What that Swiffer? Yeah, whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know. Something can't go away. And
Right.
uh, so, why don't you start sharing some of your poems with us?
Sure. I thought that I would read the first, which I don't really read that often, because I was thinking about, I'm going to read the first poem in the book, um, Our Lively Kingdom, which is called Our Lively Kingdom. And because I was thinking about the ways in which poetry also, doesn't necessarily resolve things. It's a location for uh, trying to work out ideas. Our lively kingdom. Our lively kingdoms now broken into village plots that others love to visit. The happiness plot rendered through refuse of the old argument and memory of two bodies pressed by sheer heat. Perennials and herbs grace the kitchen window of its sweet cottage. But really, almost anything can grow here. Even last year's annuals come shunting through with a tiny roar. Um, I was thinking about how, you just can't wait for the right moment. That things have a way of being resilient and just keep shunting through.
Yeah,
Um,
that's nice.
this is this poem is in the first section of the book, and it came out of a conversation about, what's your idea of God? I have some strange ideas, I guess.
We only have 4 hours left to the program, so if you could condense your answer, it would be helpful.
It's pretty short, actually.
Okay, good, great.
Beginnings in December. When I press my fingertips together and make a tangerine-sized space that the light comes through, I see God there a little bit, a glowy something. I try to press deeper in past the flesh and bone. My breath pulls into it to hold it there, deeper, stiller. And I worry about dying then, about how my small cradle of energy, of light, of what I think is God, will bounce along quietly and suddenly into a new space. Who will remember how I cry all through Advent and cry for not remembering each other light, each cradle I have shaped, been shaped by?
Nice, very nice.
Oh, thanks. I guess I'm going on the religious route here, so I'm going to read
Well,
this.
it is Lent. It is Lent. You can ring the Lent bell. It's all good.
So I'm going to read this poem that I also don't read that often from the book. It's called Saint Nothing. One of the themes of the book was really this frustration that I had with frustration, anger, with so much violence in the world. There's poems in here about gun violence. There are poems in here about racial violence. So anyway, this one is just a one of the other sparks in the dark, I think, of poetry is to complain. has a has a big job to do this year. Saint Nothing. Between the leaves of the trees, the white lust of sunlight enters. Mine now, a cord I wrap around the ones I love, to wrap the story sweet and tight of how we may have met, were made to love each other. Saint of nothing, how you bless me, how you intercede for me. Intercede now as I forget how to land my feet, discern the weather, tell a good lie or a bad truth. Let me venerate you today. Let me make offerings at your dirty little table at the back of the cafe. Why must I seek you out? Turn off the lights, Saint Nothing, and hum to me until I fall asleep. Then walk out quietly and do not return. I will not mourn you as I've mourned my body's puzzle, its strange heat, prickled skin. It is what I wore to the party, you've said. You stand quietly by. Saint Nothing, why stay to remind me what will be? Saint of Nothing, my cry is a full belting song now. My friends who will be dying before me, the man beside me, the children you'll make me abandon. What is your plan? To gain your sainthood, you suffered how? After all, losing nothing is nothing.
I like it. You get the email address. We'll get that person on the next show.
That's an interesting idea, John. Addressing your poems as people. I like that. That idea. So I was just gonna read maybe a couple more from the book.
Yeah, and then we'll have a little
Okay.
Q&A. Yeah.
You tell me when to stop. This
Yes.
one is called Thoughts About Hunger on a Morning Walk. All life is like that, a pursuit to satiate hunger. Hunger for love, hunger for food, hunger for, and in pursuing it, not beauty, but violence, which eats that hunger, persistent as the ants in the cleave of sink, the wasps boring out of the hole in the ground, the dog whining for the company of some mammal nearby, the squirrel carrying half a bagel across the lawn and in a flash dropping it in pursuit of another catch, more life in which to pursue hunger. The lady in the night shorts watering the lamppost and the curved brick edging while the grass beneath her slippers yearns. This is the way we trick ourselves, decorating the hunger with potted plants and plastic figurines. My text to my son 200 miles away, have a good day, I love you, which is not a real greeting, but the hunger to lift him again in my arms as he once was. Even my mother at 97 still feeding me her hunger, her worry, her thirst, her arms nearly breakable in sleep, joints no longer connecting, elbow, knees, and toes. Parrying, contemplating. These are just fillers like so much refuse on the shoreline of a city beach. Evidence that we lived, broke open a beer, relished a drumstick or an apple, cores and bones, washing up, reminding us of hunger. Now, at the kitchen sink, the minuscule ants march ferociously into the sprayed raid, as if still as if each still in life, still in pursuit, still hungry.
Like that. Yeah. Nice. Hunger. Yep.
So,
You want to take a little 5-minute?
sure. Yeah.
So for Barbara, Teresa, Theodora, Perry knows the drill. We have and Kathy knows the drill too. We have a little Q&A, comments, questions, things you liked in the poems. We do it a couple times during our hour. So if anybody wants to unmute and, obviously Saint Nothing, I'm trying to get info on. Anybody? Perry, Kathy? I haven't seen anybody have any comments.
There were so many wonderful phrases. I was trying to jot them down very quickly, but I don't know. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your process. Mine has changed so many times over the years, but the one I just have to say, the the God first God poem, the tangerine sized space in between that's really, really good. That is really something. What a poem.
Thank
But
you.
anyway, maybe about process and how you go about something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of just a boring worker bee, like I mean, I teach full time, so there are days where I just like, there's just not a single poem coming out of this head. I'm just full of grading and evaluating freshman writing, you know. But when I do, I do just sit down and see what comes. I try to let sometimes just sounds come through and see what happens. And then, usually by doing that, whatever frustrations or questions or, obsessions I have at the moment will come through, and when they don't, then for me, I think a lot of poets, right, feel this way, Perry, that like if it doesn't come, you write it anyway. And then
Yeah.
and you realize that one's sort of the dead one, but it's okay, and then you write the next one.
That
So
doesn't answer all the questions for sure. I always just tell my students, poetry is about, uh, for me, is conflict. And if you can express a conflict, then maybe you can figure it out and you can move on. But what usually happens is it gives you more questions. It leaves you with
yeah.
more questions.
Yeah,
Different
I
ones,
mean,
different ones.
I always say if I know the ending when I start writing, I'm really not interested in it. I have
Yeah,
to.
it's nice when it takes you somewhere you don't expect, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
Great.
But some wonderful poems, really, really good.
Can
Anybody
I
else?
know we're being recorded, but can I just say hello to people I
Yeah,
didn't
say
get to
hello.
say
Why
hello to?
not?
Hi, Roz. Hi, Teddy. I said hello to Barbara and Teresa already, and hi, Kathy. I may have met you at the other reading. I don't know.
Anybody have comments or questions or? I'm going to do it again. I always say, don't let the poet off easy. Teresa, do you want to make something? You got to unmute yourself.
You're muted.
I haven't seen my dear friend in a long time, and I just wanted to say hello and love you, and thank you for inviting me on this. So very happy to be here. All right, I'm going to mute myself and turn off my video.
I have a poem for Teresa. I could read that one.
Uh-oh.
You've read it. You know that poem.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Ciao. Well,
Oh,
I'm here. I'm listening.
okay.
I have off today. All right, bye.
Great. I mean, Kathy's in a class, so she can't unmute.
She is in a class, yeah.
Um,
So I've
So
known
let-
Teresa since the fourth grade. I'd be happy to read my fourth grade poem in her honor.
yeah, do that. That'd be good. And then Teresa's going to have to give us a kind of little commentary. Julia nailed it. She didn't nail it. She was trying to please the teacher. You know,
So this is a pantoum, which is like trying to, so unlike what I was talking about before, Perry, about my process, when I try to do forms, I really like I have to make like a little graph for myself, A, B, A, and the pantoum just kind of threads all these lines together. So so I've known Teresa since fourth grade. This is called A Song for Fourth Grade. You were that still girl in the room, arms rare twigs reaching out as though the rest of you'd been consumed by fire or water, your eyes focused, sharp, your arms rare twigs barely reaching out. You seemed to be calling me to you by fire or water, your eyes focused and sharp, as if our friendship had always been in view. You seemed to call me to you, wrapped my feelings in your dark wool sweater, as if our friendship had always been in view, and recess no longer torture. We wrapped our feelings in woolen sweaters, everything we did so awkward, teachers feared us. At recess, no longer torture, we spoke our secret language, no one owned us. Everything we did so awkward, teachers feared us, thought we'd crack on contact. Speaking our secret language, no one owned us. We gathered weeds and flowers from the concrete. Some days we thought we'd crack on contact, as though the rest of us had been consumed. We'd gather weeds and flowers from the concrete. You were that still girl in the room. So that's
You
my
wrote that in
tribute.
you wrote that in fourth grade?
No, I wrote it about fourth grade.
Okay, I was gonna say, if you wrote
It's
that in
in the
fourth grade, you
book,
should have got
John.
promoted to eighth grade.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no. But yeah, I was trying to write a series of poems about my girlhood friends, and that one came to me pretty naturally.
I remember that year very well. And I had moved into the area and was new at the school. And there was not a, was not very an inviting environment there. And we were like the two Italian girls there. And we were both twigs. And as I
Oh boy.
recall. And we were both, little, I don't know. We just didn't quite fit into the atmosphere of the area, the kids there, and they made us quite aware of that. And but she was there, and we were drawn to each other. I did feel comfortable, and we've been friends since, and I'm very grateful for all those uncomfortable moments that led us together. Yeah, very grateful.
And the thank you, Teresa. And the poem, the pantomime is just great because it just integrates. You repeat lines, you vary them a little bit, and that's how you keep the motion and the narrative and the conflict going. But
So
I think
Julia,
there's a
what
lot of
town
story
did you
to
go to school? What town did you go to school? Sorry about that.
We were in Belrose, Queens
Queens.
girls.
Queens.
It was a Catholic school,
Mhm.
lots of Irish kids.
Not to say anything.
No offense, not to say anything
But
wrong, John.
not to say
Yeah,
anything bad,
yeah.
at that time, you know.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, well, since I'm in the school mode, I'm going to read another poem from the book called Classroom Poem. A lot of the poems from the book were written during COVID. This one sounds like it was written during COVID, but it wasn't. It was written a little bit before, but it has all that leave-taking feeling in it. So it was kind of interesting. I guess did I have a premonition? I don't know. Classroom poem. My back to the small lecture hall and its now quiet swivel chairs. Only the hum of the fluorescents dimming. I followed my hand with my eyes as I wiped the shiny white surface clean of the red dry erase marker, making new shapes as my hand passed letters I'd drawn. And arrows, underlines doubled, thinking as my hand moved what they might have thought, having read little of the novel, perhaps only knowing the parts I'd sung out to them with so much joy. And now my joy was just mine. And for some reason, all I could think was happy, happy, happy to be in that room, loving having taught more than teaching, knowing the air it had left in the room better even than other knowledge. How to explain the silvery strain their boredom or wonder had left in my lungs, in the stretch of my torso as I reached to wipe the uppermost notes clear, as if also wiping clear the me who had longed once to be in that place in which I now stood. In fact, that classroom, which I always think of as my favorite classroom, and I always love when I get assigned that classroom. That's the classroom I was in when, we got the word in March 2020 that we had to get out. So I'm debating whether it's close to one. I'm wondering if I should read a couple of newer poems that aren't in the book.
Because we did the break early, so yeah, keep
Okay.
going. We'll take a break in another 10 minutes or so.
All right. So, talking about forms, I tried my hand at a couple of different forms. That one is the psalm, but I tried to do things with the psalm that aren't generally done with a psalm. I like the sort of chant-like nature of psalms, the flatness of them. And I love that they're comprised of these long lines that have kind of a break in them. So I wrote a bunch of these. So this is one. This was in Patterson Literary Review. A psalm for the girl in the church pew. When I read psalm in the neon white bulletin, I praise God for my pink palms lined with secrets. They flicker in the gray light of the church and catch dust motes traveling through church pews. I whisper to myself, today I am traveling the earth, then bear down into my hard seat. Under me, the kneeler thuds. I want to lift and lower it again and again. Behind the priest, the crucifix gleams, and a man hangs his heart red and bloodied. Praise is praise is praise is praise, but suffering is the same as hands held up to the air. Palms facing us, deliver us from evil. Palms facing away, thy kingdom come. We give thanks to the great meal, and I breathe relief like a plane's landing, wheels emerging noisily from its steel body. Standing, kneeling, standing. And then the church bellows us out into the air, which I love. I give thanks to the cars filling. I give thanks to the Entenmann's crumb cake in my hands, the cold milk in my glass. So that was a
There you
little
go.
girl's experience of church.
Yeah.
And this one is about a grown-up me. And I tried my hand at a haibun, which that form is fun because you're playing with very prose-like thing. You write this sort of prose-like thing that is set in maybe some kind of a season, and then the ending is a haiku, which is supposed to kind of bring together the themes of the haibun, of the paragraph, the prose part of the haibun. And this was in the MacGuffin. Haibun for our last minute summer rental. We like waking in strange houses, solving mysteries of their air conditioners, double door refrigerators, sliding screen windows, discovering where they keep their outdoor chairs, their laundry detergent, their first aid kit. Just a Band-Aid? Sometimes we never find these things, which is our late life version of camping, as in making do. I am training myself to stop saying middle age because I don't think I'm going to live to 118. We like sitting on their deck and imagining we could own this place, and if we did, what we would change, what would stay the same. We treasure small choices, a light in just the right place, and puzzle over the lack of normal things, things we'd have if it were ours, a good bread knife, a salad spinner. We judge their choice of TVs in every room, though it's true we tried to turn one on but failed. In the middle of the night, we hear a strange, large stomping on the roof, a thud on the deck. In the morning, there are no bodies, no evidence. At daybreak, clear sky, breeze slightly wet with ocean, birdsong. So I think we spent a lot of time in other people's house. We have spent a lot of time in other people's houses. It's very weird to think about.
Nice.
Sometimes I
Why
think,
is that? Why is that? Just give us like a 1 cent. Why is this? It's more fun being in someone else's house than your own house.
because
Just
I was
different.
thinking about vacation houses now, people don't go to hotels. We go to other people's houses,
Yeah.
Airbnbs, right? It's so strange. So one of the other things that I thought about with with the Sparks in the Dark was this notion of that the other thing that poems can do is tell stories, right? And they can tell them in different kinds of ways than prose. So this is called The Coyotes. And it was just in the most recent issue of The Common, which is just such a, they're all great journals. This one. I think this issue was focused on farming, but they also had like a poetry section. So my poem is not about farming. The Coyotes. The coyote ambles down the middle of Chester Street, and I mistake it for its domestic cousins. But it's stouter, a strange gray-white, directionless, undecided. My dog may know it's not a dog because he stares blankly back at it without his temperamental bark and growl. In fact, my dog is silent. I am walking us backward without realizing, and then we turn and run. I feel stupid 3 blocks down and swear I'll never walk down that street again. But that was spring, and I've walked that way early and late with Vinny nearly every day since, and no coyotes. They're in winter mode somewhere, and I find I'm missing the thrill of seeing one so out of place. At certain corners, Vinny comes to a dead stop and stares, a very slight whimper in his breath. Or he moves past the corner and stands imperiously midway through the block to cross the street. Because he is dying, I let him lead the way. We cross the street and he stops again at the base of the stoop of Mary's house, the woman who lives alone now, whose brother calls her from the VA hospital each day. In spring, if she's still on this earth, she'll sit outside, call Vinny to her, good boy, and of her brother, she'll tell me how often he calls and what he's eating. He's living the life of Riley over there, adding her sweet cackle. Fearing the wild as I do, I marvel at them both, Mary and Vinny in their simple union, the way it's carved a space inside my dog's tight memory.
Really nice, and letting your dog lead the way. That was nice.
Vinny's no longer with me. I really miss him.
How long did you have Vinny?
We didn't have him long. We only had him like 9 years.
Yeah.
He got cancer.
Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking
Keep
maybe,
going.
yeah,
Keep
keep
going.
going. Okay. So this poem is called Tender. This is about my mom. She is no longer with us. She died at the age of 103 last year.
So that means you got a few years to go. You got 40 left. Yeah, there you go.
Maybe. And in her later, really like last 2 years, I found her state of being kind of magical and interesting. Tender. My mother would describe food she liked as tender. I do this too now. Tender pea shoots, tender zucchini, tender slice of London broil. When tender, the plate filled with light. Spread its meaning at close of day. The dishes slipped into the sink easily after dinner without scraps to scrape. But of course, things could be tough, too. A not fresh artichoke, with gigantic outer leaves of escarole cooked that should instead have been tossed. The meat that could not be cut or swallowed. Now she flips her hand through the air as if to bat a fly, as if to say, enough. The world she gave me in my hands now. The knowledge of when to cut, how much to trim, whether it is worth the cooking of it at all, mine now. Enough, she says, for she's had enough, for she's given enough. She sleeps between being fed tiny spoons of rice pudding, the sleep tender, the sleep tough.
Very nice.
Mm.
103. Wow.
Yeah. And this one, I guess in a similar vein, thinking about we were trying to locate her, where she was and what she was experiencing when she couldn't really tell us anymore. This is This poem was actually written in response to a prompt. I took a workshop with Gabby Calvacaresi, and her prompt was just outside the garden. Just outside the garden. Oh, and this one I'd like to give the journals all their due. This was in Lily Poetry Review. Eileen Cleary published it. I love Eileen. Just outside the garden, the irises. Just outside the garden, or where the garden used to be, where I'd stand quietly watching my father remeasure and cordon off our plot each spring, holding the ends of the sprung measuring tape for him, or pouring the seeds from their crisp packets, some seeds like an infant's gold earring, spilling too quickly from my small palm. Some seeds flat like the bugs we found in the kitchen drawer, easy to lay down in the tracks. The irises my sister planted after my father could no longer work the ground, spread blue and violet across the fence between the small Cape Cods. Though thick-stemmed, they are easy to clip, and I'm dizzy with the spread they make in my fist now, their petals sturdy and flush. I bring them into the house once filled with the life of my parents, their tender negotiations, what they would have to eat, which greens from the garden they'd steam. I place the vase on my mother's bureau in her centenarian sleep, wake, sleep. I think she sees them, or she sees my father. I leave her conversing with the air.
Mm. Capture some great moments.
Aw, thanks. Yeah. Um, I well, I don't know. I'm gonna read this one. It's because of Sparks in the Dark. It has some sparks in it, so I tried
Oh,
to sparks.
hey,
Um,
Perry, get out the fire extinguisher. We're gonna light it up.
and no, it's not gonna be that lively, but but it's from it was published in Paper Dragon. It's a lovely online journal from the students at Drexel University. White Crest Beach, Wellfleet, night sky. We park the car in the sand-dusted space, the windows swiftly fog with salt air. Engine off, we try to be satisfied looking up through the glass, for it's too cold. But then, no, we walk out slowly into the very deepest black, find our footing on the edge of the cliff. If we stumble, the beach will catch us, but I'm afraid. It isn't the dark, but the sky lit up with the constellations that I can't name. The wind is in my ears, the sand is cold and wet as I lean back, and I let the layers show themselves until I find the light of the North Star, the spin of its smallest orbit. It knows its limits, marks its place around the axis, pinned through the planet. We discern its constancy, its certain place. Polaris, pole star. Nothing in the autumn sky could move it, could lessen its modest glimmer, north, north, north. And that is to say, north, to say the way others found their light through forests, through deserts, through the ancient stories, through the night to night, cold and terrifying, its smallest beaming still solid, the courage of it to burn like that, outside the realm of the moon, flickering like a candle, breaking us a little. That was my flicker.
I was gonna say you're
Mm. So I'll just I guess I'll close with a couple of poems back from the book. Um, as I said, the book was written finished really during COVID. It was, I take a long time. I take a long time between feeling something's done. So So I read this one. I did an interesting kind of I was following these two people online who had the Sylvia Plath project. I don't know if people know about it. Was uh they would publish, in her last year of life, she wrote a lot of poems in her last year of life. And so I was inspired to write quite a few poems thinking about Sylvia Plath. This one is not a response to any of her poems, but something I read about her during that time period. It's called Labor After 2 Decades, and it begins with an epigraph from Frida Hughes, who was her daughter. The epigraph reads, "They are killing her again." Frida Hughes from the essay called The Mother. In the early years, my legs, like the hind quarters of an animal, would collapse beneath me. Most days you would have to say I wasn't coping well. The cupboard doors open, I'd sway into its hollow as though to put my whole body in there. The toddler, doe eyes watching me, raspberry lips, tiny glittering teeth, a small girl bracing. Does she remember how I couldn't lift my fork some days, couldn't move, couldn't do? Is it too much for you some days? I'd ask any other mother, and the no like a whip against my skin, and how I knew it was coming, though I'd ask again and again. Around 5 p.m. each night, my breath would go faster, rounder, and I could no longer look at the clock, afraid then and there I'd burst, loosening the love I'd learned as a child into sharp slivers, barely visible on the faux brick linoleum floor. That year, I bought a copy of the Diaries of Sylvia Plath, flipped to the middle of the book, and realized I could not do it, had no right, had no vision large enough to hold the both of us. This was the first book I've ever thrown away. Just reading Sylvia Plath at that time, it just got me thinking about, my early days of motherhood again. And it was funny to think about it after such a long time. But I realized I introduced that all by saying the book was written during COVID, which had nothing to do with that last poem. So sorry about that. But I'll read this poem. This was published in Pangyris, another wonderful journal, and it's in the book. And it was written to at the beginning of COVID. So this one, the COVID applies. And you probably remember this, but in May of 2020, the New York Times published 1,000 names, and they were supposed to represent the first 10,000 people who had died of COVID. I don't know if you guys remember. And
Wow,
at the
no.
time, we thought 10,000 was a lot, right? And that was May, right? And we became most aware of COVID in March 2020. So, but it was also that month that that George Floyd was killed by the police. And so a lot of things came through. I'm just looking at the dates here because I wanted to give them to you because it's very it's kind of interesting, the confluence of dates in the poem. So George Floyd was murdered on May 25th. And on May 26th, I received this email from my yoga teacher. So this is the epigraph. The title is "The New York Times Publishes 1,000 Names." And the epigraph is this: "I don't know about you, but I'm ready for something to be different. The staying at home, not knowing what's going to happen next, worrying, not sleeping well, it's tiring." Email from my yoga teacher, May 26, 2020. Let us be tired. Let us stay and arrange the coffee mugs on a new shelf. Let us stare at the dog. Let us roam around the house, forgetting what we needed to do next. Let us read the 1,000 names, knowing they are only a portion of what ails us. All morning, let's read them. Let us read the names out loud. Let us be interested in how the Times defines a life and how we do. How we do. This is the virus and that is the gun. This is the virus and that is the knee on the neck. This is the vigil and that is the vigil. This is the breath not taken and that is the breath not taken. This is the storm and that is the cough. This is the mask and that is the placard. Let us hear the fear in a neighbor's cough. Let us hear the fear in a siren. Let us vigil. Let us watch here on our knees in the sunlight. Let us remember to kneel in the sunlight. 8 minutes, 20 minutes, a lifetime. Let us reject athletic trainers and yoga teachers and meditation leaders and priests and poets. They mean well. They mean to get us back into it. They are here for us. Let us stop feeling relieved if we do not have underlying conditions. We have underlying conditions.
What's the name of that poem?
It's called The New York Times Publishes 1,000 Names. Well, I don't know if I can find anything uplifting to read.
Well, let me share something in the nothing department.
Okay.
So one of the favorite movies we watched when the kids were little was called The Never Ending Story. 1984 film. And it's about a kid at a school that's reading this book about a place called Fantasia. And the longer he reads the book, he begins to figure out that he is in the book. And the fantasy world, I know I'm kind of off target here, but you'll like this. The fantasy world is threatened by the nothing.
Oh.
It destroys everything it touches. And the kingdom needs the help of a human child to survive. And I know a breakup. He has to shout out the name of his mother who's passed away.
Oh.
Yeah. He does it. It's like a storm and doors are flapping open and shut. And it's like, blow, never ending story. Yeah.
Oh,
Atreyu.
I don't
Atreyu
know if
was one of
I
the
ever
heroes.
watched it. And the naming, that's so intense
Yeah,
that
the nothing.
is
Yeah.
what fights the nothing, the language.
It always reminded me that you can respond to the nothing is in a very specific way. I don't know. When you said it, it kind of just triggered this whole
Yeah,
movie reel just started to unfold
sure.
of the nothing. And it's
Mm,
great. Great.
mm.
So Saint Nothing meets the nothing. That'll be a WWF, slam down.
Yeah, that's great.
Nothing happened. Nothing happened
Okay.
with nothing and nothing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Listen, does anybody else, before we still have time, anyone else comments or questions? Teresa, we probably want to know what happened in 8th grade, so we'll get to that next show. Anybody have any comments, questions?
Yeah, can I jump
Yeah,
in?
sure. Yeah.
Just the most recent thing you said, the naming, I love that. I am one of those people that listens to the reading of the names every September 11th. Because, well, like a lot of people, I knew people there who some made it out, some didn't. But I think that listening to the names, make sure those lives still have meaning. It's not about, I'm going to cry. It's not about being angry. It's about never forgetting. So I listened to those names, but I loved the poem you wrote about the friend you made in 4th grade. I don't know if you know this, Julia, but Linda Dini Jenkins and I have known each other since we're 7.
Oh.
And yeah, we met in 2nd grade when this kid who was sitting next to me, Stuart Granger, blew his nose into a piece of loose leaf paper, and it made me cry. And she came to my aid because I was so grossed out. I was sobbing my little socks off. I was so upset. And we have been friends ever since. And in 1991, we wrote a whole sort of choreo poem called If I'm Talking, Why Aren't You Listening? And it was basically started because of we were both working on individual projects. And as we were working on those projects, we started talking about our friendship when we would get together. And this whole 90-minute choreo poem came out of it. And we performed it a couple of places. And anyway, it just made me think of that. And occasionally I still write poems about her. And she likewise about me. So it's fun to see that you did that too. Thank you for sharing it.
That's a great story. I'm so glad to know that about you and Linda.
Yeah. We go back a long time. I'm 74, so we were 7. What is that? 67 years. We've known each other long time.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah,
audience, Linda and Barbara have attended, and Linda has read for us at the Italian American Writers Association. That's how we got to know each other, just for the group to know.
So Theodora or Roz, any comments or questions?
Yes, and I want to just say hi, Julia. That was a wonderful reading. That last poem leaves me speechless. But I want to say how much I appreciate your attention to detail in the way that you move us from something very tiny to something cosmic. It's great. It's
Thank you.
wonderful reading.
Thank you so much. Roz and Teddy have been longtime poetry partners. We started meeting for poetry a lot of years ago. And we've gone our separate ways in terms of poetry workshops, but we're still connected. So
Great. No, fantastic. So it's 1:23. If you want to close out with one more poem, we'll call it a
yeah.
day.
Okay. So since it's on the verge of March, I'll read this one. And it's interesting because this poem almost didn't make it into the book, but there was an exhibit in a nearby town. They were looking for poets to collaborate with visual artists. The visual artists would select the poems they wanted to work with. And somebody selected this poem, and she did such a beautiful job with the artwork that I felt like I had to put the poem in the book. I don't know what. Anyway, it made sense. Also, this one, the cover is from another poem from that exhibit. This is by Sharon Santillo, who made a painting based on one of the poems in here. Anyway, in New England's February, I worry about what the crocuses will tell us. Any minute now, betrayed by a single day or two of false spring, crocus bulbs will vibrate just beneath the frozen earth and startle the frigid air. They'll poke through a later blooming beauty bush or circle an overgrown ivy's root that's upended the slate walk, their light purples and yellows insinuating, even as the cold air will likely descend on them again. They want to be our sign of spring, of all that's past, buried in the cold ground. So who am I to forecast their rising up and their eventual and premature death? We've made it to this point, but I can see now that I am on the lookout for a 1-year sign to mark the day when days became more days, and the pandemic had killed what then felt like many. The crocus will have a lot to carry this year. I don't know if it will be able to, with its very short life, bear up under all that hope and terror.
Very nice.
That was a weird one to leave you with.
Yeah, I was gonna say you. I think we went from God to crocuses. We did a little fourth grade, second grade run around. Yeah, this is like a carousel or something. I feel like we're getting on a different horse and there's a different genre. No, it's great. It's it's all great just to hear it and listen to it and the visuals and yeah, there is the crocus is trying to poke out of ground. That's just such a monumental event. We may not think about it that way. So no, very nice. So Julia, thank you
Yes.
for I know I finally got your name right on the invite. It took a couple times to, yeah.
That's
Let's see,
okay.
Julia. There was a movie. What was the PBS thing? The chef? No,
Wait,
no, it took a
I
while.
have Julia Child. I have a Julia Child poem, but I didn't read it. It's in my book. You'll
Okay.
have to get the book if you want to read my Julia Child
Oh
poem.
boy, oh boy, here we go. And we like that. Promote the book. Promote the book.
Yeah, it's Bordighera Press. I think everybody here probably has it. So.
No, listen. Thanks again. This was really very nice.
Yes, I second that.
You
Julia,
gave us a
thank you very
wide
much.
variety of
Thanks
topics.
to you as well.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And thanks everybody for coming, for
Yeah.
spending your
Bye,
lunchtime.
everyone.
Yeah.
Have a great
Yeah.
afternoon.
We'll talk again soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.